Hello, my name is Carrie Johnston, and welcome to the Yukon Entrepreneur Podcast Series, a series all about how Yukoners are adapting their businesses during the pandemic. I'm recording today on the traditional territory of Chandin and Ajax First Nations, and my guest today is Sonny, who was with us in season 1 as well. Sonny, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Sonny Gray. I'm the CEO of North Star Agriculture and Flat Creek Farms. I also own a couple of service-related businesses here in Whitehorse, Gray Management Services, Yukon Clean, Sirius Security, to name a few. And thank you for having me.
And Sonny, are all of your, welcome. And are all of your businesses based here in the Yukon? Is your primary client base Yukoners, or do you have any business outside?
Yeah, most of my businesses are Yukon-based businesses. Some of them, like logistics, for example, they're traveling in and out, but most of our businesses are local, based out of Whitehorse.
Okay, thank you. So Sonny, thinking back to, when this all began, when the pandemic first began, can you kind of tell me your first memory of the pandemic? It's kind of that age-old question, like, where were you the day JFK was shot? Where were you when you realized like this was a thing that was going to be big?
Yeah, well, I mean, I remember I kept tabs on it just via, the international news. So, you saw it happen in China, and then it was kind of a big deal. And all of a sudden, Italy, it was like the ball was starting to roll. There was a lot of death toll. And, business as usual in Canada. I traveled. I ended up in Quebec with my father. And that's when it got serious. We were watching it, and it had hit Canada, and Quebec was starting to react. And that's when I knew that it was really serious. Is the day that we left. We left a day early because we felt that if we didn't get out, we weren't getting out. And sure enough, they closed the borders behind us the day after, the day that we were supposed to leave, the borders were closed. So we needed to get out because we drove to Ontario and we flew out of Ottawa to come into the Yukon. Then I remember getting into the airport, and there was nobody. It was empty. And, we checked in and went through security. We got to our gate, and that was where the people were. That was it. There might have been 30 or 40 of us. And I remember thinking, this is surreal. I mean, even driving to Ottawa, on the 401 or whatever, like there was like a smattering of cars. And, it felt almost like post-apocalyptic, like something serious had happened. And this was the aftermath, and there was nobody around, So then we came home and we isolated in the basement together for friggin' 2 weeks, and that became a reality. It was like, holy shit, okay, this is happening, and it's hit us. And but you're still naive. I think back then we were just like, oh, I'll blow over and give it a couple of months, and we'll get things back under control, and we'll be back at it. And here we are 2 years later.
Yeah, I know. Who would have thought from then to now that we'd still be in so much of the similar places where Canada's experiencing this big Omicron wave, and we're acting and reacting as it throws this next turn of the pandemic for us. So, Sonny, which of the public health measures that have been in place or currently in place have you found most challenging as an entrepreneur to integrate?
Well, I think we're lucky, right? I mean, our businesses are service-related businesses. We're typically working out of other people's homes. So the important measures that we had to put into place was really just protecting our staff and ensuring that, if they were going out in the public, to deliver mats or to wash carpets, or even if they were working outside, snow shoveling or whatever, that they had the proper, PPE, like the equipment required to ensure that they were safe. Our office, I think, we've always had a downtown office that people can come to if they have issues or they want to chat in person. That's been closed. It's open to the staff, but there's a sign on the door that says, that we're closed, because it's really close proximity, and I don't think it's worth, putting our staff through that. And then, of course, I think we've seen it pretty consistently across the board. I mean, we're doing it right now. The adoption of technology, Zoom and all of these different ways of communicating now that, traditionally, it wasn't necessarily accepted, right? I love it, to be honest. Like, I used to have to go physically to all these different business meetings. You'd be running around like a chicken with your head cut off. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here in my bedroom right now having a chat with you. This is convenient for me. And so seeing some of the shifts, there's a lot of negative, obviously, that's happened with COVID, but there's some silver lining here and there. And I think we've been lucky enough to just kind of pivot and work through it as we go.
Which of those adaptations are you most proud of, whether that's through your business or even societal? I mean, you mentioned Zoom and the adoption of technology. Are there others?
I mean, like I said, for me, from a business perspective, like, the adoption of the technology is huge. Like, just the fact that I don't have to physically be there. That means that frees me up as a person as well. Like, I can be anywhere and be in a meeting. So that leaves me so that I'm not so tied down, because I was tied down. When you're running around doing all these meetings and you have to physically go there, you got to be shaking hands and that's how business traditionally worked. So we're seeing some major shifts in that, and I think for me it's for the better. I know a lot of the old school, people that are really social suffer, obviously, because they like that contact. And I mean, I guess if I was living alone, if I was a single guy, yeah, I would be, but I have 5 boys, and I have a wife, and I have my father, and my house is a busy place, so I'm not lonely very, very often.
Yeah, no, not at all. That's pretty busy with 5 boys. What are you learning about your business model? I mean, you've kind of got 2 major streams, like your service related business, but also your agricultural related businesses. So like, what are you learning about your business model in either one of those or both over the last couple of years?
I think the agriculture model, it's kind of how it's playing out, exactly how I kind of anticipated. That the Canadian food production model is a very fragile system. The logistics and delivery, point of delivery, immediate daily delivery model isn't necessarily ideal. You're seeing prices of food go up. There's lots of reasons why things are happening within the system the way they are, and I think what that's doing is that generating an interest now, from an investment standpoint, from a federal government, territorial government standpoint, from regulation and legislation. We've seen some changes. I mean, Alberta and BC now, have made modifications to their Slaughter Act, so that they can accommodate slaughter on farms, so that farmers can sell, meat directly from their farms. So once again, silver linings in that respect, because that concept, we've been preaching that concept for a long time, that we need to start focusing on regional development of agriculture infrastructure. That it doesn't make sense to be sending animals, to 2 or 3 different packing plants for the entire company, entire country. So you're seeing some pivoting. I'm part of the National Food Advisory Council, and to hear the federal minister, the agriculture minister, actually say, yes, we're interested in developing regional infrastructure, like that's huge. So there's that end of the spectrum that you're seeing. Food is being highlighted even more so. On the service end of things, I mean, in the very beginning, like, of COVID, things were scary. People didn't necessarily want you in their house, and you know what I mean. Like, there was a lot of hurdles, I suspect, to a certain degree. I mean, we own a security company, and so that's been busy, because every time they introduce new measures, sometimes they need security to help, educate the public, and so that's been busy. So there's been dips and troughs, I guess. I laughed the other day when I was talking to my business partner, and I said, we kind of lucked out in the sense, Russian roulette of businesses here. that most of our businesses aren't seriously impacted the way I've seen others that have lost everything. So I guess we're lucky in that respect. It could be a lot worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Have you had to access any of the pandemic related supports, either from the feds or from the territory?
Initially, we did because
Yeah.
because everything was being impacted the way it was initially. Like people it's funny how we adapt as human beings, right? Like in the beginning, we are scared and we are, and then eventually we start to, I don't know, hit our stride and go, well, you know what, we can live with this. And these are the precautions that we just need to take, right? And so we saw a shift, and then things there was uptake again. And it doesn't matter now. We get hit on a regular basis, like you said. The Omicron is the newest flavor of the week, and every time it hits, I kind of cringe and go, "Are we gonna see like some fluctuation here? Like, is it?" Nope. It's pretty steady. Like people are just like, "Well, this is what it is." I think we've had enough of the population potentially that's had it and bounced back, and those people talk, and eventually there seems to be a little bit of like, well, it's bad. Don't get me wrong, but it's not as bad as we thought it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, Omicron being a little bit more mild, especially for those who aren't immunocompromised or in those higher risk age groups. Yeah, and there is that that piece around severity of disease and how it impacts different populations. Yeah. Were the supports helpful? Were there any gaps? Like, were there any funding gaps that you were missing?
They were amazing, to be honest. I've been in business now for 16, 17 years. Never once have I had, help. Not from a bank or from you know what I mean? We've had to, bootstrap everything that we've always done. So for this, it was a blessing. It was really above and beyond, and we couldn't have done it without them. So, I think Joel wrote a letter to ECDEV at one point, just applauding them, saying like, "This is an amazing program. We really appreciate what you've done for us. It's made our nights a little less sleepless, in the beginning."
Yeah. Well, yeah, that piece, just a momentary peace of mind with so much instability and chaos around us. Yeah.
That helped.
Going forward, how are you thinking about your businesses differently? Like, where do you see your opportunities these days?
It's a lot of this. My focus is really on the local scene, only because I've done some traveling, and I used to love traveling, and now I'm just like, I hate it. I hate wearing a mask for hours on end, especially with a beard. Like, it's so gross. So I'm just like, you know what? All right, I guess we'll just keep developing here. There's a ceiling obviously in the Yukon, but there's also tons of opportunity, and there's still a lot to develop. And where historically I've kind of cast my my gaze to like, oh, what about NWT, or what about BC and Alberta, and it's like now I'm kind of like, well, I don't feel like going there, so I guess I'm staying here.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, it's beautiful. Why not? And yeah, there is a ceiling, like you said, but there's also still a lot of opportunity and untapped potential here. Have you taken up any new skills or anything to kind of better position yourself for where you see those opportunities?
Yeah, I mean, some of the skills that I've taken on in the past 2 years is because my businesses are always evolving. So I went out and got my permaculture design certification, which was something I wanted to do. I think once again it comes back to like being gone to meetings versus being home to do meetings. I just had extra time that I could use to work on things that had education, right? So that was a 1-year course online. That now I have a certification and I can do it. I just started my organic master gardener certification, which should be done by end of April. So, taking on these educational courses, my company will hire individuals to do those jobs. But as the CEO, I really want to know, what should be done and what shouldn't be done, so that I can call BS every now and then. It's just like, no, this is not how we're going to do this. Yeah, and that helps, I think, grow our company and guide our company, and it's just continues to build on our values and ethics as a company. So I guess, yeah, it was nice to have that extra buffer of time to be able to take on education, which is nice.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You just mentioned it, sort of like you want to have that knowledge or insight as a leader, so where you can call the bluff or call this like the spade a spade or whatever you're seeing. What are you learning about leadership during this pandemic? Like leadership's inherent in what we do as business owners, but what are you kind of observing? What are you experiencing yourself?
I mean, I think we're developing a lot more compassion and a lot more understanding, and trying to. It's a difficult, controversial time. People don't get along because they have differing views, and as a leader, it's our goal to unite and to lead people forward together. So I've found that it's everybody has their views, and there's no point in arguing. There's no point in trying to convert. Just accept and find common ground, and then work together on the common ground stuff. At this point, I'm vaccinated. If I'm working with people that aren't, ultimately those are the people that are at risk. Not me. I'm vaccinated. I can still get it. It's not even a vaccine, right? I mean, it'd be different if I could, but I could still get it. It's just I'm not going to get it as bad. So there's some leadership around that you had to have a bit more compassion with people and understanding, and work towards common ground versus arguing and creating dissent and then splintering off. So that's been different, and interesting. But I mean, ultimately, as a leader, that's your, like I said, that's your goal, right? Is to unite and then lead forward. And I feel like, that's been working out pretty good.
Any advice for emerging entrepreneurs during this pandemic?
I mean, there are probably vacuums now that are made even more obvious than ever. Like I've seen them, and I mean, I have to control myself. I'm just like, no, we're not going down that road. Just someone else will pick that one up. But there's definitely lots of vacuums now. Like look around you. There's needs and niches. There's massive development happening in it from a technological standpoint. Like you start looking at VRs and virtual reality and NFTs and blockchain and creating this metaverse, and part of that is a byproduct of us being home all the time, stuck home. I just bought an Oculus 2. It's a virtual reality headset. I did a bunch of boxing last night. I feel like $1 million. Like burned calories like nobody's business. I bought it because I want to talk to my buddies back east. I used to go to Quebec once or twice a year. I haven't been since COVID. So I miss those guys, right? So if I can put a headset on, we can, virtually be in a room together, and we're each having a beer at home, but we're shooting the shit. It's not as good, but better than nothing. And I suspect that they're going to leverage that. There's going to be a lot of room in that, in the future. And I tell my kids, like, get ready.
Yeah.
AI, robotics, virtual reality, this is going to be your world. And the pandemic, I think, is setting the stage for it. It was always going to happen. Now it's just, they speeded it up, right? It's fast tracked.
Yeah, the user case for there is there, and you I mean, I think you can see it, like you were saying, in terms of even as business owners this ability to be in so many different meetings without, physically moving your body to all of those spaces all the time enables a lot more. I mean, it's a lot to give through the computer, but it's also, it saves a lot. Yeah.
I mean, there's pros and cons to that whole scenario.
Yeah.
A lot of people will say like, well, we're stuck at home. Like, that's not good. Like, you need to get outside. And I agree, sure. But I'm not naive enough to think that just us complaining about it is going to stop any of it. It's coming. And so I would much rather be familiar, know your enemy, be familiar with the incoming technology than, be oblivious and be, caught off guard.
Yeah. I remember an elder once saying, like, we had the benefit here in the territory of kind of seeing technology be integrated down south, and it kind of rippling up here. And, this is a couple of years ago, but he was kind of like 5 years. And I'm like, ooh, I feel like that's really shrinking now these days. Like, the advance of technology is that much faster, like my lived experience is that integration is a little bit slower, but still, adapting as it kind of comes forward. And yeah, it's been.
Where we'll see some change, I think, is if Musk ends up actually completing the Starlink, and then the entire Yukon is covered in internet.
Yeah,
that's gonna change the game.
It really will change the game. Yeah. Whether it's Musk or any of the other sort of low orbit satellite companies that are developing out there. But yeah, I mean, that access, even here with the podcast, right? Like, I have to do my upload at night because that's the only time, like, you set it up, and I gotta have my, because that's the reality still of upload speed, right? And even what that enables for businesses, we would see that in the mining industry, right? Like, upload speeds are low to sending all of, when I used to work in exploration, sending all that data up through the satellite takes a long time. All of those things were always queued up overnight to do those big data dumps, right? When there's space. Yeah. Any aha moments for you? Shifts in your worldview? Ways you're looking at things differently?
Kind of. There's aha moments in the sense that as an entrepreneur and a businessman, when you see a pandemic, you can recognize some of the opportunities and some of the companies that are, taking advantage of those opportunities. And sometimes you'll have those conversations with just regular people that aren't in business, and you just mention like, oh, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, because you can see it coming, because you understand how capitalism works. And sure enough, it happens. And then a couple months down the road, you run into that person. They were like, holy shit, you were right. And it's like, yeah, wait. Now this is going to happen, and this is going to happen. And they're just like, what? So, there's that aspect. With my coursework, permaculture and now the Master Organic Gardener course, I've definitely had a bit of a paradigm shift surrounding, agriculture and science. Right? Right now, we're pounding the drum for science. Like, what? You don't believe in science? But when you read about pesticides, fungicides, chemical fertilizers, all these different things that are science and that are to our benefit, apparently. And, the more you read about this stuff, the more you're just like, wow, like, we really don't know what the fuck we're doing. Like, we're just, we make decisions and we apply things. We play God in a sense. And then we don't look at any long-term ramifications. We don't think about the consequences down the road. We just that's the fix for now. And typically that fix comes from science. So it's been interesting in that respect, because like I said, you've got one thing happening over here, this pandemic, and this, how could you not believe in science, And then me reading all of this, this information about how science has pushed its agenda. And now it's been my biggest problem with the whole thing is I've said scientists can be bought, right? It happens all the time. It's happened historically. Hemp versus cotton. Like, I always tell my kids, I want you to think for yourself. I just want you to question things. I don't want you to just, everybody says it's this, so it has to be this. Stand back for a second and just look around and then think for yourself, And so done a lot of that.
What's keeping you grounded? You mentioned a little boxing and meeting with friends online, but anything else keeping you grounded?
Yeah, I've struggled a lot this year with depression, like to be completely honest. The weather, the darkness, some of the relationships that I've had with some of our clients have been, trying and rough. So keeping myself grounded has been a struggle. I mean, my family, I guess, is what ultimately pulls me back. My wife is my rock, and my kids are my reason, ultimately. And then, we're going the other direction right now. You're starting to see more daylight. We're planning gardens, we're planning projects. Got some very cool projects that I feel those, like, that's always gets me going, like the next project, what are we doing? All right. And then putting the pieces together to ensure that it's successful and then launching it. And I'm excited about those. So that always keeps me happy.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, that mental wellness piece is often tough for us here in the north. And when we hit those -40, -50 long bouts of it, when you can't get outside and be on the land as easily. And I think many Yukoners are
getting outside, and like all the vehicles are frozen, all the equipment is frozen. Like it's just such a struggle when you're farming to combat that element. Chainsaw, I had to cut firewood. I could only cut firewood in 20-minute increments at -50 because the saw would produce. The saw is running full tilt. It's hot, but it's friggin' -50 and it'll freeze. It'll freeze whether you're running it nonstop or not. So those are the struggles I think that you're faced with as a farmer, and they are extremely, they wear on you. And and there's a community of farmers, and Facebook, say what you will about it, it's got its negatives, but it's nice to just check in sometimes and be like, oh man, like this really sucks. And people are like, yeah, I can't wait till it ends, like everybody's suffering kind of together. And even the mental health thing, like it's more apparent now. Somebody posted the other day that they were struggling, and I chimed in, was like, me too, and then you don't feel quite as like you're not alone, you're not suffering, like you're not. And sometimes when you suffer by yourself and you don't hear about anyone else suffering like that, you just think, is it just me? Like, am I just off? Am I broken? When ultimately that's not the case. We're all suffering, and the more that we're open about it and transparent about it, the better it is going to be for all of us ultimately, because we're not going to feel alone.
Thank you for that, Sonny. Any closing thoughts before we end out today?
No, I mean, hopefully we're not doing this again in a year, but no offense to you, but
no, none taken.
But if that is the case, if that's what we're at, I'm looking at strategies for the future. We talk about mental health, we talk about, well, look, one thing that's coming out of this, it's not just the meetings now that are going to be remote and virtual even down the road. This education is going to be like that too. We're seeing a collapse right now in the education system. The teachers don't want to go to work. It's a mess. Everything's falling apart. But we're going to start to see some transition, I think, to more of an online teaching. And if that's the case, then we'll buy some land in freaking Mexico, and we'll just go down there during the winter. And those 5 boys, I was homeschooled for 4 years, and I turned out pretty good. So I suspect that we could take advantage of a bit of homeschooling plus these new steps towards virtual learning. And and then we can just modify our environment. If the winter is what's causing, depression, and it's not just me, like some of my kids obviously get those genetics from me. So I'm watching them and I'm going, oh, you're a little off. Like, is it because it's dark all the time? And is it because it's cold? And we just need to, create some plans that are like mental wellness plans, where as a family, where we're like, okay, we need to just take off, even if it's only 2 months. 2 months is 2 months. And do it right with Christmas break in there, have Christmas in Mexico if we have to. But I think we need to do something, because we can't just keep doing this. This is not going to work. But these changes that COVID has brought about, I think, are going to help us make those changes. So as bad as it is, there's like I said, silver lining.
Yeah, I was met with my counselor just at the end of December, and she closed out like our session. She's like, "Are you bush?" And I was like, at first I was like, "Oh, am I bush?" Well, probably. And we always think about bush like because working in exploration or hunting industry and being in camps for like 80, and it kind of was always like a badge of honor. Oh, occupational and safety, and work contracts aside, but you're like 84 days in. What and there were like kind of badges of honor, for how long we were in this like isolated space, and thinking about, and this is, years ago, but thinking about now, and like not really leaving the territory, and not really leaving our communities, not really leaving our homes, and those aspects of being bushed that we're so familiar with up here, kind of manifesting in different ways.
Oh yeah, and some of my kids are more social than the others, and it's not, they don't want to hang out with their brothers all the time. They need to see their friends and go out. And so we've seen them pick up iPads or whatever and chatting with their friends that way. But it's when we had I had one go snowboarding there for like a full week, with his friends, and I was like, there you go. That's what they need. That's what they really need. They need that connection. I think we're going to suffer from that over time, is that lack of actual human contact and connection. It's fine to do this, and this gets the job done, but there's something to be said about sitting down, in a room with family and friends, and that's something that we're going to start to see collapse as time progresses. We've already seen it happen, even just to your standard family, right? Like, historically, families were large because of the extended family. It was just, you had your grandmas and your grandpas and your aunts and your uncles and your cousins, and that was just common to be together. We're seeing that slowly decrease, where your family is your immediate family, your kids and your wife. And so there's things that we've lost in that process. You tended to have mentors. Your kids had mentors. You had services there that you exchanged. Someone took care of your kids while you went to do groceries, and you did your groceries and you did theirs at the same time. Like, not seeing that happen anymore. So as we continue this, it's going to be interesting to see what we lose.
Yeah. Thanks so much for your time today, Sonny.
Thanks for having me once again. I appreciate it. You take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye now.